Welcome to FarmCraft. I'm John, and Valentine's Day is coming, so we're making a copper rose. Starting out with some scrap copper pipe. This is a tubing cutter. It's a hardened steel wheel that gets forced into the pipe by the screw. You spin it around and keep tightening it down until you finally cut all the way through the pipe. Now I'm cutting the pipes lengthwise, and I'm using pliers to hold it because they get pretty hot. Then just with some needle nose I open them up to have little copper sheets. And now you start pounding them. I want to thin it down a little bit. And copper work hardens, so the more you pound it, the harder it gets, so then you have to soften it by annealing it, which you heat it to red hot and then you quench it in water and it gets nice and soft. It's kind of the opposite of steel.
Yeah, that's just a hot dog.
Sorry, couldn't resist. Had to play a little trick on you there. So with each sheet, I am annealing multiple times and pounding multiple times, probably 3 times per sheet to make it bigger. You can see there I'm 2 3/4 inches, and then after pounding it and annealing it and pounding it some more. So I usually start at the center and work my way out to force the copper outward. I'm looking like about 3 1/4 there. So I gained 1/2 inch. And just some interesting footage here. Nothing like seeing red hot metal. So now I drill a hole in the center of each sheet. And this is some heavy gauge copper wire. I drilled the hole to fit snugly over that wire. Now I'm drawing out the petals. The star-shaped one there is the bottom leaf of the rose. If you look at a picture of a rose, you'll see that they all have a little leaf like that on the bottom. And just cutting them out with some tin snips. And I'm cleaning up the edges on a grinder. That's actually a cheap Harbor Freight grinder that I use just for grinding soft materials, because copper and aluminum and brass tend to foul the wheel. But if you only use it for soft stuff, it's not really a problem. Now I'm flattening the edges of all the pieces, which just gives it a much better look in the finished product. And taking a cross-peen hammer, I'm hammering to give each petal some texture. And the leaves as well. Now I had to anneal all the pieces, so rather than do one at a time with my little torch, I got out my big propane torch. Same process, just heat it up to red hot and then quench it in water. You don't actually have to quench it, but I think it's a little softer if you do. I'm just shining it up on the wire wheel. And here is my wire that's going to be the stem. I need to make a platform for the rose to sit on, so I'm using braising. You could use solder, but solder is kind of ugly and gray. Braising is kind of a nice gold color. I bent the stem like that so gravity would keep the molten braising all in one spot rather than running down the stem. And then I take the grinder and I make a little platform there for the rows to sit on. Then you start stacking all the pieces. Start out with the leaf and then put the petals on. I'm arranging them roughly 90 degrees to each other as I stack them up. Then I tighten the vise down and I peen over the remaining wire. This traps everything between the braised platform on the bottom and the mushroomed over copper wire on the top, holding everything in place. Now I'm putting duct tape on my needle nose just to keep from scratching up the copper. And you just start from the center and bend up the petals, roll them in towards the center. And I think they look better when you take the tops and you bend the top back. That right there gives it a more natural look. Using the channel locks just to keep the overall shape periodically as I work on the petals. Because I annealed everything before I did the assembly, all the copper bends easily and isn't breaking as I try to work on it. If you let the copper get too hard and you don't anneal it, it'll start to break and crack. Just keep bending up each petal and wrapping it around. I found the first ones were the hardest because they have to curve the most. The further along you get, the easier it gets. And there you go, there's your rows. Using a file to clean up the vise marks that were left on the stem. And now I'm moving on to the leaves. Got some more copper sheet, pounding it out. And rounding over the stem. I'm using a cold chisel to do the central vein on the leaf. Using the cross peen again. I think the leaves come out looking pretty good. There's leaf number 2. I cut the stem to length. And then I'm using the oxyacetylene torch again to braise them on. So you put a little spot of braising on the stem of the leaf and then also the stem of the flower. And then the trick is you have to get them both molten at the same time. But the stem of the leaf is so much smaller, so you concentrate on the stem of the flower, then you push the leaf in there. Once they're both molten and run together, you can take the torch away and it'll cool off and you can let go. You got to be careful though, because that little fine stem, if you get it too hot, it will just burn up. Just cleaning it up a little bit. And cutting the stem to length. And there you have it. One copper rose made from junk. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.